The Geekorama podcast is brought to you by superherofiction.com, the one-stop shop for novels featuring the superpowered heroes we all love. Your hosts are...
Trish Heinrich, author of the Vigilante Superhero Universe.
And I'm Jeremy Flagg, author of the Children of Notre Dame universe.
So, hi, Jeremy.
How's it going?
Very busy. Very, very busy. And not work busy either.
Yeah, I'm finally over being sick, so I can finally take sick off my to-do list.
Well, good for you. That is awesome.
We're at about 80%, so I feel my voice is back. I can actually project a little, and I don't have to whisper at the camera.
You don't sound prepubescent anymore.
Oh my god, that was bad.
I miss it a little.
My teenagers will never let me live that down.
Oh, as they should not. No.
So what's going on with you?
Well, in addition to trying to make further dents in Book 2 of Heroes of High Tide, I'm juggling my daughter's really insane extracurricular activities. I don't know how they talk us into all this stuff every time. My oldest was in the school play, which ended a couple weeks ago. And then, for whatever reason, my husband and I decided to get her voice lessons for her birthday.
Oh, good present.
And the good thing about it is the coach lives at the end of our block. So Rosalind walks there.
Oh,
and then
smart.
On his way home, because Dan walks, our house is really close to a foot ferry terminal. And on his way, he walks up the hill and past the house. So he picks her up on his way home. So it's actually really simple, but it's just kind of logistics. It's hard, but then my youngest she's in this new school play, and she has dance class. And then my oldest not only has voice lessons, but she's in 2 dance classes. So the week is very tricky.
So I don't think, and I always am floored by this, so I work 3 jobs. I'm a high school teacher, I'm a college professor, and I write enough that I can actually say I put enough time aside to call it a job.
Absolutely.
It's just me. I do it on my schedule when I want. If I don't want to sleep, I don't sleep. If I want to sleep in, I do it. I cannot imagine. My boyfriend's probably watching this, going, "This is starting to sound a little too bachelor-esque." But I can't imagine. On top of that, of the more than full-time job of being mom.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, and I'm not very good at energy management. So I think, I can totally do all of these things and handle and then by Wednesday, I'm so done. I'm really, really tired. The one thing I will say is it helps to have a partner that is very involved, and Dan is. He will make dinner. If I take the girls to dance class, we come home, dinner is made, either for the family or just for the girls, and then he and I eat later. And so, and what I found out at dance classes, that is not a normal thing. Most of the moms at dance school, they have to go home and they make dinner, even though their husbands have been home for hours. And I'm just thinking, no, I would not tolerate that. What is wrong with you people?
And I think that that's one of those things that when people, especially parents, you hear a lot of I don't have time to do X, Y, Z. Well, and then there's a guilt that comes with that. And I always hear people say, well, I wish I could. Well, I mean, let's be honest. I'm a high school teacher, and my job is between 30 to 40 hours a week, if you don't factor in my really long commute. But kids don't exactly have a set schedule.
They don't. You could try. Well, we try. We try to keep them on a schedule, but they are agents of chaos. I am convinced children are agents of chaos.
So I got some good news.
Yes, I want to hear about this. I'm very excited.
Okay, so last week I talked about I'm finally a comic book creator and my dream has been achieved. Well, just to amp this up even more, Amanda Call sent me the ink flats or the ink drawings of the pages that we're going to pitch to publishers. So now it's my job to paint the flats, which, all that time I have. And thankfully, she's also working on her own webcomic full time, and she's a mom. So if she can do it, so can I.
Do it in the hot tub.
So trust me, I would. So the great thing is I've I've now seen what it looks like, and
Mhm.
it kind of got a little bit real, and it started being, um, uh, wow, this is a thing that's happening, and it's a super emotional graphic novel that we're working on, where it's for individual issues, and it's
Mhm.
called I Am the First, and it's about a gay youth growing up in northern Maine, not my own experience or anything, and um, eventually finds out has superpowers, and it talks about
Oh, wow.
it's really just about being different and how being in a world
Mhm.
that doesn't accept different, um, how that goes, and it's a very dark coming of age story. So we're really excited for it, and um, hopefully I'll have some pictures I can share very soon.
I am so excited. Is this like I know you've been thinking about this for a while. Is it meeting your expectations, exceeding? Like, what does this feel like for
Every
you?
time it kind of goes in the back of my mind, and it's like, okay, this is happening, and then I see another page, and I get a little choked up about it because I relate to this story. Like, if people say write what
Hmm.
you know, this is very much my story, and it's very much a story for a lot of youth, and so I can see where people are going to connect to it, and the fact that I see how difficult the story is, like, it's
Hmm.
still a reality, and that I go down this little downward spiral of getting choked up on it. So every time I see it, it still has that effect. So I'm calling that a success as far as the story goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very excited to see
Um,
what this is
it
becoming. Very
it's going to be
excited.
exciting. But I have one other thing I kind of wanted to do, and I'm going to do it live on camera
Oh,
because for
okay.
those who might not know, it is Trish's birthday, and I'm publicly embarrassing her. But I wouldn't do this without some sort of payoff for it. So if you see Trish online or leave a note in the comments, just say happy birthday. She's forever 29, so we're just going to go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with
Um,
that.
but because we're geeks,
Oh,
see if we can get
you got me a posable Wonder
it is
Woman.
one of the original bendable posables, but Wonder Woman can't fight crime alone. So
Oh my gosh.
I saw these in a
Oh
candy store of all places, and I was like, I don't even need, I just need a reason to finally gift them. So,
Oh, I
um,
love it.
so eventually I will send them, and there's
Okay.
something in there for the girls too, which is super dorky, but
You're so sweet.
okay.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
this month in pop culture history,
We have some really good
I'm
ones.
excited.
So yes, in 1940, Hattie McDaniel became the first African American to win an Oscar for her performance in Gone with the Wind. And this is, while very significant for the African American community and artists, the movie itself, of course, is a little contentious given that it romanticizes the Old South and slavery and all of that. But it is very significant that Hattie McDaniel in 1940 won this award. And back an extra little tidbit: the award ceremony that year was held in a hotel in Los Angeles that was segregated.
And might I also add, the reason this is coming up in case you watch this later, the Oscars just happened, and
Yes.
no one watched them.
No, no, they did not. Um, Also, moving right along, in 2018, we all know Ryan Coogler's film adaptation of Black Panther made its debut, but it also marks the first time a female cinematographer was hired for a film with this size of a budget,
I
which I found
I
extraordinary.
just at this day and age, like I just don't. But the one thing I am happy is that Black Panther not only really pushed and portrayed the black community, but it was also female. So it wasn't just it was multiple marginalized voices. So I just like
Absolutely.
when there's this we're all in this together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Ryan Coogler has made a point of any studio film that he does, he hires female cinematographers. And he is really the only director that makes a point to do that. I mean, as far as I know, up to this point in 2019 or 2020, geez,
Yeah.
I am tired. I need some coffee. Um, but yeah, most directors really don't pay attention to that. And I believe statistically, it's like 75% or more of cinematographers hired are male, which is very interesting. Um, and our last little tidbit for Geek History is happy birthday to LeVar Burton. He's born on February 16th of this month. LeVar Burton is famous for his roles of as Kunta Kinte in the miniseries Roots, which was his first acting job.
Did not know
That blew
that.
my mind. That totally blew my mind. Geordie LaForge on Star Trek: Next Generation, and he also has been a producer for decades for the beloved show Reading Rainbow, which is one of the most successful PBS shows of all time.
And I like
So
that
happy birthday, LeVar.
I like that LeVar Burton still comes back as Reading Rainbow, and
I know.
it was not a job. It's a lifestyle, and he keeps pushing it. Um,
Well, and he has one of my hands down favorite podcasts, which is LeVar Burton Reads.
yes.
And it's literally him reading short stories, and it's so good.
The other thing that I thought was really cool, and my mother of all people pointed this out to me, LeVar Burton played Geordie LaForge, and not only was um, he one of the African American minorities on there, but he also was disabled.
Yes.
So I guess I had the show never really. There were a couple episodes I do remember, but it was never a handicap for him. It was just a
Hmm.
matter of fact. So I always thought that that was kind of cool as well. And I wanted bionic eyes as a kid.
Who didn't want bionic
I
eyes?
still kind
Yeah.
of do.
But yeah, that's our geek history for this week. As many of you will learn by listening and watching our show, I am a total, I love geek and pop culture history. I have so many books about it. I read so many blogs. I hunt for articles. And so I found some really great ones for February, which is Black History Month, and we're going to include those in the show notes. So there's three really good articles specifically about Black superheroes, and my favorite is the one from Ebony online magazine. That was just a really good
Was
article.
that the black superheroines that aren't Storm?
No, that was which one was that one? I don't know. Did I include that?
Uh,
Oh, no,
yeah,
yeah,
it
it
was the
was from
Evolution.
IO9. Yeah, IO9 Gizmodo did that one. But the evolution of the black superhero was more, it was commentary and it was written around when Black Panther came out in 2018. And it was just really talking about how important it was and brought out a really great point, which is that black female representation has a long way to go, and that that is something that really needs to be a focus of filmmakers going forward.
And that was, I think, one of the things that I really did love about Black Panther is we have a woman who is a military leader, and she stands alone as a military leader, and when she provides advice, the dudes listen.
Yep.
And then I even liked that his love interest was involved, but she did not care about their romance one bit.
No.
And she never let their relationship dominate her goals, her actions, her philosophy.
No.
And that was just it shouldn't be this way, but mine was kind of blown. So
Yeah, it's unusual. It's unusual for the romantic subplot not to be the thing for the female character.
so ready to geek out?
Yeah. I am so ready to geek out. You have no idea.
She wrote a lot for this one, so
I did.
okay. I want
I
to hear
did.
about this because I've heard so many people talk about it.
Okay, so my geek out for this week is the MMORPG Star Wars: The Old Republic. And for those of you that are like the MM what, it's an online art role playing game. And I love video games. I, as a kid, played just as much Nintendo and Atari as my brothers. But these days, I cannot get any time on the Switch. My daughters are totally taking it over with Mario Kart. It's pointless. My Mortal Kombat 11 cartridge has barely. barely been liberated from the case. So I generally play computer games. And I was playing World of Warcraft for a while, but I really got kind of bored with the end game gameplay. And I went back to Star Wars, which I had played when it had first come out, and I didn't really. There was a lot of things about it I didn't like, and it was kind of clunky, and so I went back to it because I heard it had gotten a lot better, and it has. So in this game, it's a couple thousand years before any of the movies, and you have the Sith Empire and the Republic. So you get to choose whether you're going to play a character that's in the Empire or the Republic. So that's the first thing you have to choose.
Okay.
And then you can choose your class.
So what do you get for
And there
classes?
are, so there's the Sith Inquisitor, which then breaks down, like each class has two subclasses you can choose. So there's the Sith Inquisitor, and underneath that, there's the Sorcerer, and I forget the other ones. I'll just go through the major classes because I remember those better. So there's Sith Inquisitor, Sith Warrior, Bounty Hunter, Imperial Agent, and I think there's one more for Sith or the Empire, but I can't remember. And then the Republic, you get Jedi Sentinel or Jedi Sage, Jedi Warrior, um, Smuggler, which is like one of my favorites, um, Smuggler, Trooper, and I think that's it for the Republic side.
So are these following kind of like D&D classes?
Sort of. You can really boil down any online computer RPG into D&D
Okay.
classes very easily. The thing I love about Star Wars, though, a lot of these online role-playing games, you have some choices on how you interact with the non-player characters or NPCs in the game, but Star Wars takes it to the whole new level. So there is a lot of specialization that you, as the player, choose. So, for instance, I have a Sith Inquisitor character who's light side committed, not dark side committed. And that is a choice that you can make. It's harder to play, and you really have to think about your choices, but you can do it. You can also have a Republic character that's committed to the dark side, which is a lot of fun too. You also accumulate crew members or companions as you quest. And these companions, you want to gain influence with them because they will fight alongside of you on quests and dungeons, that kind of thing. In order to do that, however, you can give them gifts, or, and here's the other thing that is really cool about this game, when you interact with a non player character, it is an actual conversation. You are given three different choices on how to respond to that NPC. It impacts your influence with whatever companion you have with you, and it can impact your dark or light side points.
So it was kind of so I mean, back a couple years, Skyrim was kind of similar to that, except I basically just took the NPCs around with me because I needed someone to hold all my crap.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of
No, you
crap.
can. Yeah. Oh, you collect. I have my two main characters that I play are already level 25, and I'm like, I have so much stuff. It's incredible. But you get all of these different banks. If you're a subscriber, you have one bank that you can actually share across all of your characters, no matter if they're Imperial or Republic.
Okay.
And then you have personal cargo holds. Now, here's the other really cool thing. Every character gets a ship. You get your own ship. And you can do starship battles, which I don't really like the starship battles. I've never really dived into them, and from what I understand, it's the least played aspect of the game for whatever reason.
Okay.
But you can outfit your ship with extra armaments and weapons and things like that, and you can do full on starship battles.
So did you see an increase in players when the Mandalorian came out?
I just started playing this again in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, so you're probably riding the Mandalorian wave.
I think so, but the thing is, you can't. Well, first of all, that's the other thing you have to choose is your species. So the Mandalorians actually are not a species you can choose, which a lot of people are kind of pissed off about, actually. But you can unlock different alien races. the four core ones are open to you whether you're free to play or you're a subscriber. And then you can unlock a bunch of the other ones by subscribing or like unlocking them by doing like real world purchases. So it's really the customization of how you play and how you want your character to be in the game is unparalleled from anything that I have played.
Well, and so the last big game I played was Destiny, Destiny 2. Not that it matters. Same game. And that was everyone's beef with it is okay, you could get 800 different guns. They're the same gun with a different skin on it. So basically
Yeah.
you're fighting for the same thing over and over again. And after the first like 2 months, you realize, do I really care if I unlock this special achievement that does nothing?
Yeah.
Um,
Whereas in this one, honestly, I could play every day, 8 hours every day for months and not unlock everything there is to do in this game.
okay.
It's incredible. Because and they have several different achievement trees. One that's locked into your account, so it's account wide. A couple that are like specific to a character, and they give you lots of different perks or gear that's cosmetic, and that's everything I love. You have a whole tab that's just for cosmetic armor, so you can interchange the armor that is usable in terms of like giving you stats and protection
Okay.
without changing your look.
The
And I love that because I'm a total whore for a good armor set. I just am.
yeah, I I got kicked out of parties a lot because when in Destiny you can change the color of your armor, and of course I was always like some bright neon pink or something. And in the regular game it doesn't matter, but when you're playing against other
Yeah.
characters and you're trying to hide behind a bush,
It doesn't work so
in like
well.
real life, I don't hide very well.
You know, but yeah, so I'm geeking out about Star Wars: The Old Republic, and in the show notes, I am leaving a link to the actual website, but then also a YouTuber because I love going on YouTube and learning different game mechanics. It's how I learn games, and so I'm leaving a link to the YouTuber when it comes to Star Wars: The Old Republic.
So my the most important question on everyone's mind is, do you get your own baby Yoda?
Not yet. You there it's not even an option in the real world market in the game, which I am really shocked that they haven't done that yet.
So I'm not kidding. A friend's birthday party is coming up, and I was looking for Yoda stuff just to be weird, and
Yeah,
about 2 hours worth of flipping pages, just it kept going. And the best is
yeah, there's
the the
tons.
little baby Yoda that goes in your pocket, and if you pull the pocket down, he's given the finger.
Oh my
My personal
God.
favorite.
That is awesome. All right, so I have totally geeked out about this. Now it is your turn. What is your geek out?
Okay, so my geek out kind of relates to our deep dive later, but I have been a little bit obsessed with watching superhero shows that are not superhero shows.
Oh,
I've gotten a little uh, fatigued on things like Arrow and Flash, and mostly properties that I know anything about. So, okay, some dude is going to show up and has some unique ability and fights crime, and at the end of the day, saves the world.
yeah, very formulaic.
Boring. So I've been watching Raising Dion, and no spoilers here. The the whole premise of the show is about a young mom who is raising a young single mom who is raising her son after her husband
Hmm.
dies, and that's how you're introduced into the show. And you get to watch this fun dynamic. She's a fun character, and he is a goofy 7-year-old boy played by a 7-year-old boy.
Oh my God, what a concept.
And so he there are times where he's looking on the set and he has this expression, either he's a phenomenal actor or he's not acting, and someone asked him a question he doesn't know the answer to, and you get to watch him think about stuff. And
Yeah.
so the whole lens of the show is through their family dynamic. And so um out of nowhere, he gets magic. And
Huh.
she knows that he's developing powers because, comic books,
Yeah.
but he doesn't understand what's happening to him, and he thinks that he's now able to perform magic. And he can do, like,
Oh
his
my
powers don't
God.
really have a limitation that we know of. Like, he can
Yeah.
teleport a little, he can make things fly around, and there's a logic to how his powers work. He just doesn't understand it yet. And so,
Hmm.
um, and the best part of the show is the question that it asks. The whole series is based on, if you were raising your kid and all of a sudden your kid had superpowers, what would you do?
Which is so simple, and yet you go down so many different possibilities with that.
And there's moments where she's like, you need to not be doing that in public. And
Yeah.
and everything she says, I have heard a parent say to their kid, just not about their superpowers.
Yeah, the stakes would be so much higher
And so,
if you had a kid like that. Yeah.
and the great thing about the show is it's a really slow burn in the fact that you don't even fully understand what the the antagonist is, who, like, you don't
Mm.
understand any of it for a long time. and
Oh,
and it
interesting.
peels it back in such a subtle manner that when the reveal happens, you're like, oh, should have seen that coming for a while.
Oh, I love shows like that.
Because the thing that you care about is mom and her son, and
Mm-hmm.
it's uh, played by the mom is played by Alicia Wainwright, and she does a great job. And there are a couple episodes that um, her son gets picked on, and bad stuff happens, and she has to explain to him, you're different. And
Mm-hmm.
as a white dude watching this, um, and watching her talk to her young black son about the responsibilities of a young black man, was heartbreaking for them to be able
I
to
bet.
have these conversations. And it was a really good way, because as adults, I think we're a little bit more resistant that other adults should act a certain way and all this.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's a dialogue with a young kid, it breaks your heart over and over again. And he rebounds really well, and he adapts, and you see what he has to do to be better than average.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other thing that I really liked about it is, and unfortunately, I do not have the actress's name, but there's a young girl in a wheelchair who plays
Oh.
the sidekick. And
Oh.
um, so she knows that he has superpowers. And by God, she's going to be his sidekick, whether he wants her
That
to
is.
or not.
Oh
And
my God, I love
you get
it.
to watch friendships from a 7-year old, except the stakes are so much higher and it's comical. And he doesn't understand why she's in a wheelchair and she has brittle bone disease. And
Mm.
he tries to navigate it, and he bullies her at first, and then, course corrects. And it's charming. And you know what? At no moment did the Hulk show up and smash everything and brute force their way to the solution. It was subtle. I laughed. There were definitely tearful moments. And at the end
Oh.
of it, I was so excited when, of course, the first thing I do is go back to Netflix and see second season coming. Yes.
Yay!
So if you haven't seen it yet, I cannot recommend it enough, especially if you're on superhero fatigue. This is a fun, uh, imaginative, and very kind of quiet story that
Mm.
really, you can watch it with your young children. And I really would recommend watching it with your young
Oh,
children. There's
wow.
great questions.
Okay.
So it's definitely, uh, the last couple episodes might have a little bit scary spot, but as long as it's a family, I can say
Hmm.
that it's ages 6 and up pretty safely.
Okay. I'll
So,
have to put it on a list for the girls.
oh
We
yeah,
still haven't finished the Dragon Prince. We got to finish the Dragon Prince first, but
it is
um
emotional. For I, there will be some real conversations that come out of it.
and I am totally fine with that. I like films and TV shows and books that do that. I think art should do that. Not all the time, but
Yeah.
Exposing kids to age appropriate art that raises those questions, I think is a great way to have those conversations with children.
And I think back to like the book The Hate You Give. The same thing that
Mm.
happens in that happens in Raising Dion.
Oh,
For
wow.
not to that severity, but kind of to that severity for a 7 year old. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just it was awesome, and I'm greedily looking forward to the next season of that. So Netflix, I sent you
Get on it,
I
man.
sent you emails. Get on it.
Let's do this.
Okay, so for the deep dive, so you just
Yes,
saw this. So
I did.
how about you start it off?
Okay. So I've had you, Jeremy, and Alicia McCullough, who's a fellow superhero author, and a couple other people tell me you have to watch Fast Color, which is an Amazon original film. And if you have Prime, it's free with your membership. And it's on my list, but it's generally speaking, I'm so tired at the end of the night. I just want something that's going to be like easy to watch. um, but finally, I was like, no, I really want to see it because we wanted to do a deep dive about this movie. So I watched it last night with my husband, and it's it's like what you were talking about with Raising Dion. It's not your typical superhero story at all, really. And there's an open question about how these women have the powers that they have. Is it eh, where did it come from? Like it's not really raised, and it's definitely not answered. This is way more of a quiet, subtle, simple story. It's very, very simple. And we will have some spoilers here. So if you haven't seen it yet and you want to, just stop now, go watch it, and then come back. Um,
So the thing that I loved about it, and this is how I think this just complements the simplicity of it. It we don't know when it takes place, where we kind of know where. Um,
yeah, kind of Midwesty
yeah,
is when it's supposed to. Yeah.
but the only difference in this world is there's no rain,
Hmm.
and that's this one subtle change redefined a world.
It did. And I loved how they incorporated that. It wasn't constantly in your face, but every interaction pretty much had something to do with water
and
and the conservation or lack thereof. It was really well done.
and no one went into a long monologue about why there was no rain.
Yeah, they didn't.
It's simply her showing up, and in multiple instances, wherever she was, they would ask, "Do you want a full bottle or a half bottle?"
Hmm.
And that's how scarce water is that you pay by the half bottle, and
Yeah, and it's
and
expensive.
really expensive. And that just that one little piece created this beautifully dystopian world
Hmm.
where we have so many questions. We want more, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, it didn't give us. But it
No.
wasn't important, and that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, the world building is there to frame the
Yeah,
story. The world building is not the story. And honestly, with a superhero story of any kind, the world building is generally speaking a more important part of the story than it was in this movie. This is purely there to give you a framework for these people's lives. And um, I loved that it was a personal story. It's about family. It's about these three women, it's these three generations of women, and they have these powers where they're able to kind of undo things like a glass bowl. They can break it down into dust and then they can put it back together. And afterwards they see colors everywhere. There's just beautiful like rainbows everywhere. And this goes back generations in their family. And they have been hiding in the same house for generations because of it, because they don't want to be found out. And the Ruth, the main character, played by Gugu Mbatha Raw, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Um, she's she's kind of the middle generation. So there's the older generation, Beau, which is her mother, played by Lorraine Toussaint. Is it Toussaint or
I think it's
Toussaint?
Toussaint.
Toussaint. And then there's Ruth, and then there's the little girl, Lila, who is played by San. You how do you research the pronunciations?
Sanaya Sidney. I had to look these up.
Sanaya Sidney. That is beautiful. Um, and something happened to Ruth. Her powers went kind of cattywampus, and her powers, instead of becoming very simple, have become destructive. And it set her on this path of addiction and isolation and destruction of her own life, um, because she couldn't control it. And now the movie begins. She's trying to make her way back home to her family.
And the beautiful part of
Um,
that was that the this whole film is beautiful, and not in cinematography, but in these super subtle messages. So the opening little piece of the movie is she's trying to get back to her family, and it wait for it. This movie is just metaphor central. That metaphor is throughout the whole movie, where she is trying to
mhm,
get back to her family. Even when she's with them, she's trying to warm back up to them and get into their good graces. And
mhm.
this movie is so self-reinforcing that there were just messages everywhere, but they all pointed to the same thing: ultimately
Yeah,
family.
yeah. And there was also, Dan brought this up too, which I thought was interesting. There are uh, there are also elements of control, giving up, not having control in an unwilling way. So like Ruth wants to control her powers, but she can't. And in the end, the mom gives up control willingly to save her daughter and granddaughter. And it's the juxtaposition of losing control and not being able to get it back, and then finding it, and then somebody being willing to give up their control and their freedom so that you can have yours. It was just an incredible moment that was so simply done. It wasn't like fireworks or anybody yelling or screaming. It was so simple.
And I think one of the things that I really loved about this is the story is the story almost falls away at certain parts, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a I'm going to say it's not a horribly strong plot. It's more about relationships and interconnections. So the
Mm-hmm.
antagonist is someone who's chasing Ruth, and she kind of knows why, but it's never really discussed. And ultimately, they do catch up, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, this family dynamic is I almost thought that at times there was a weird question of, is the family a positive or a negative?
Yeah.
And I think it did a really good job of straddling that line. I wasn't sure where it
Mm-hmm.
was going to end, or I kind of assumed that everyone was going to die a horrible death, but
Well, and I think that's because of the way we're conditioned,
yeah,
right?
someone
Um,
snaps their
it's
fingers.
Yeah, and everybody dies. But also, the thing that is really unusual about this movie, and it shouldn't be, but it is, it's about three black women.
Yes.
And it is a family of black women who have had this power generationally. And so I was really struck. The mother is talking about how she had to sneak out of the house to make a friend who ended up becoming um, Ruth's father, her lover. They never say that they were married, so I'm not sure they were married, but they were very much together and in love. And she had to sneak out because her mother kept her in that house for her protection. And I was just also thinking about how the risk there is for black women and men. And in particular, like this thought, like there are times when I get scared for my girls going to school, because in this day and age, you never know if somebody is going to come in with a gun and shoot the place up. But that level of fear is so much more and is constant with parents of black children.
And the
And
no, go ahead.
go ahead. Well, and I was just thinking about that in terms of like Bo was hidden away by her mom for her protection. But it wasn't just, I kind of felt like it's not just about her powers, it's about the color of her skin. Like that was never spoken, but I feel like that was there. And I thought that was really
And the
interesting.
great thing about the grandmother in this is when Ruth is in her rebel stage and doing drugs and out of control, the grandmother lets her go. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't force her out, but she gives her the option of, if this is what you're going to do, you need to go. And
Yeah.
she offers a choice. And it's those little things that I thought were just so beautifully executed. And
Yes.
Lorraine Toussaint just, it must have been hard to be in a scene with her because she could be reading the McDonald's menu and giving an award winning performance.
Yeah. The gravitas, uh, just everything about her, honestly.
She decorated the house.
Yeah, I read that in the trivia. She went through the location, the house where they were living, and she actually asked for certain decorations. She asked for certain kinds of drawings and artwork on the walls.
She
Um,
became the
I also,
character.
she really did. And the other thing I loved is oftentimes when we see a person of color in roles where there are special abilities or whatever, they become kind of the token black character or the magical black person. And there was none of that here. And I think that was probably because all three of them had it. And it wasn't like, oh my gosh, look at the special people. There was none of that. It was treated very simply
And
and very almost matter of
and
fact.
the grandmother's lover is the white sheriff
Yeah.
who at no point dominates or over like
Nope.
he's the sheriff. I mean, that's some amount of authority,
Hmm.
and yet he stood back
Yeah.
and he let what had to happen happen. So, what did you think about the scene in the kitchen
Which one?
where after the fight?
Oh, where they're just quietly going about their business making breakfast. I thought it was brilliant.
So,
It was so good. There was so much tension there, and they didn't say a word.
it's this whole movie is shot very standard. There's not a whole lot of special cinematography to it, but there's one continuous shot. It goes for about 3 minutes, and it's
Hmm.
after a heated disagreement, not a fight, but pretty. My family
Yeah.
is really wrong, and everyone's mad at everyone, and it's the camera holds still, and they're preparing. Uh, Ruth is
Breakfast.
Ruth is doing the dishes. Her daughter is making breakfast, and the grandmother is showing up to get coffee. And the fact the way they kept interweaving, yet
Hmm.
another metaphor for the whole movie,
Yep.
and the amount of tension where, oh my god, this is a family fight of a family who wants nothing but the best for each other, and they're
Yes.
mad.
Yeah. It was so real. I was like, I've done that.
It
I have had this interaction with my children or my husband.
it's
It was so well
it was a
done.
skin crawl moment, and
Yeah.
the special effects for their superpowers are beautifully subtle.
Hmm. And simple.
Yeah, there was no like massive special effects budget, and it didn't need to. And even when we finally witness the quote unquote fast colors, it's still beautifully simple. But that one
Hmm.
scene, I walked out, and that was my okay. Let's just go rewatch that one.
um, I do want to talk. So I looked at some of the trivia on IMDb, and there were a couple of things that I thought were just wonderful. And one of them was one of the filmmakers. She says representation really does matter. And she recalls two moments that drive that point home. The first was when her young son asked the nanny on set why everyone was looking at his mom. And the answer was because she's in charge, which, yeah, that would be totally unusual on a film set. And the other happened at a screening with black girls in the audience who rushed Sydney afterwards to praise her performance. And Sydney is Ruth. No,
Lila.
is it Ruth?
Yep.
Lila. Rushed Sydney afterward to praise her performance and character. A young black woman told Hart, the filmmaker, that she wished she had had this movie when she was their age.
And so the
And it's not like Black Panther
no,
in the sense of all these warriors in this big battle. It's so simple.
and it it's real. It's a little bit of like there is no moment when watching an Avengers film do I think, okay, let me go out and make my body armor and go fight crime.
Yeah.
This is just about people existing and seeing the world a little bit differently, which we all
Hmm.
relate to.
Yeah.
Um,
It made me very grateful for, I mean, I live in a very rainy state, and it made me very grateful that rain was in the forecast. I mean, it's one of those things where they were so good at creating this world where it hadn't rained for 8 years that the framework, even though it was just a framework and it wasn't in your face all the time, it was kind of in your face all the time. And it was kind of terrifying in that respect. Like, oh my God, what would the world be like that? So that was kind of for me like the biggest stakes, I guess, was how do you fix a world like this?
so I 100% recommend if you are a fan of powers or about representation or forget representation. If you just want a great movie that
Yeah.
has a super element to it, a little supernatural, this movie is throw it on your list. Stop
Hmm.
rewatching the Avengers. I'm sorry, guys. I'm exhausted from it.
Well, and it's also a palate cleanser,
Yes,
honestly. It's not like any other superhero or supernatural kind of story I've ever seen
and
because it's not going for what's sensational.
it was so good that it's currently in development to be a series.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we don't have anything to tell you about the series because there's no anything about it. Just that
Yeah, real hush hush.
just that Amazon is looking to produce a series. We don't know if it's the same characters, if it continues on. It ends on a amazing cliffhanger. So if it picks up from there,
Yeah.
I'm extremely happy with it. So
Yeah.
um,
And Viola Davis's production company is one that is working with Amazon to produce it. So I'm super excited about that, honestly.
so it again, superheroes, go watch it. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And leave, after you do, leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. Let us know your favorite part. Um, let's talk about it because it was really good.
Okay, so I think that actually leaves me with what I want to ask for question of the week because
Do it.
apparently we're going to start having a question of the week segment all the time. Um, I don't know where it came from. So my question is, what what is your favorite superhero film that is not an action adventure film or that
Oh, good
defies
question.
the DC Marvel formula?
Oh, I love
It's
it.
super
That's a
open.
good question.
No one's going to judge you if you decide to go Marvel anyways, but
Yeah.
yeah, I want to hear more about superheroes that aren't the superheroes that are dominating the box office because that's what I want to keep watching right now.
Yeah, something a little bit different. Yeah, leave your answer to the question of the week in the comments below.
Yes. And I think that's a wrap.
That is a wrap. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Okay, so we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye. To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoyed the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and Friday for YouTube fans.